If we know that there aren't going to be consequences for any deaths or any actions on the show, we can't really care about it, because even if it looks like a character is dead, they can always be brought back, which means that none of the apocalyptic, world-ending dangers mean anything.
She's right, you know. Hey guys, if you didn't know who that was, that's Sarah Z. She just put up a video essay a little while ago called Everything Wrong with Supernatural. In it, she talks about how, being a fan of the show, she has seen the degradation of the show throughout the seasons, the lack of purpose with the characters and the plot, the retreading of former lore established, the retconning, the bringing people back to life, and just the kind of lack of purpose of the show. And admittedly, she talks about it a lot better than I do. I just kind of get frustrated with just how the show is written. And this season, I have to admit, I've given the current showrunner, Andrew Dabb, a lot of flack. I believe that the guy has basically turned the show into a fan fiction love letter of the show Supernatural. It is now a comedy parody of its own fan base, pretty much. But it's not just his fault. As much as I love Season 11 was technically a retread of Season 5. Literally all the elements of the show were almost identical to that of Season 5, with replacing Lucifer with the darkness. And Crowley was technically Lucifer in that string. While I did like Season 11, and while I did think that Jeremy Carver has probably been the best showrunner since Eric Kripke, everything that has happened past Season 6 has almost no meaning in terms of the overall plot, in terms of purpose, and actual development in character and story. The first 5 seasons, as everyone knows, was a set plot line. While not everything was set in stone, there were elements that were leading up to the finale. Parts from each of the 5 seasons were all building up in terms of character development between the brothers, the stakes being raised, and the overall grandiose conclusion coming to an end until they got renewed for a 6th season. Now this is when Eric Kripke left as showrunner because he felt that he had finished the story, and in fact he had. The story that he wanted to do had come to an end. And what proceeded afterwards was literally a monster a season affair. Each season has had its own different villain. And while there was this aspect as well in the original 5 seasons, each of those villains all mattered. The only time that you could say that it is somewhat mattered was the connection between Season 10 and Season 11, with the Mark of Cain apparently being a key to unlocking the darkness, even though Dean had that thing on his arm the entire season, and we didn't find out the consequences of removing the brand until literally the last 5 minutes of the season finale. And now I already know that a lot of you are already starting to type hateful comments and be like, Supernatural's the best. Come at it from a constructive point of view. When was the last time that the brothers had any development?
Sam and Dean don't get any real character growth anymore. No, seriously. Sit down and ask yourself, what have Sam and Dean actually learned since, say, Season 6? How have they meaningfully changed? How have their experiences shaped them? Well, the answer is, they haven't.
Sarah Z brings us up pretty darn well. Ever since the end of Season 5, everything between the brothers has literally been a pointless retread. After taking on the apocalypse, after going through all the turmoil that the brothers went through, aside from Sam not having a soul for the first half of Season 6, why the fuck did these brothers continue to lie to each other? Why do they continue to not tell each other the truth? Why do they keep secrets from each other? Why are they trying to protect one another when they both know that they work best together? In Season 13, why was Dean set on going through into the alternate universe alone and leaving Sam behind when they've been through shit 10 days worse to Sunday before this? There hasn't been a single bit of development between these two in almost a decade. And because of this, there's 2 reasons why the show keeps going. One, because of the lack of development between the two, the show can be easily written and the show can be easily produced. And 2, Jensen and Jared don't have to really try to get into the characters. If the characters aren't developing at all, then they don't have to worry about changing up their persona, their actions, or anything. The consequences are laid out, and the consequences don't mean anything. When have any of the season finales of the last 8 seasons ever had a lasting effect on the brothers that wasn't fixed within the first 5 episodes? None of the effects or the consequences that happen to these brothers have any lasting effect to actually cause any sort of drama. The last time the brothers were in real danger, actual danger that made sense, was in season 5. The brothers have been killed and brought back so many times since then, literally you know that they'll make it through. And that's not just because that you know that the season has a 23 episode bill order. It's just because it's so blandly written. Sarah Z also brings up the point that the characters' deaths don't mean anything.
Sam and Dean have died so many times now that it's incredibly hard to care when one of them is killed or sent to hell or purgatory or trapped in another dimension. They're always brought back, and sure, maybe they're kind of wonky in the head for a few episodes, but they're always back to their old selves eventually.
This is a joke amongst the show. A lot of you guys go on the comments and you'll be like, ah, he's coming back, and you make a joke about it. But when the story writing is literally a meme, don't you feel that that possibly is a reflection of the degradation of the show? Brooklyn Nine-Nine made fun of this with its recent 5th season.
Do you have any enemies in common?
Let me think about that. Parlov is my enemy, but he's also his own enemy because he's such a boring and repetitive writer. He just keeps killing off characters, resurrecting them, and killing them off again. Because of the Chrysalis Orb.
And when a major television show can literally call you out for being so lazy with its writing, you know that there is an issue.
You guys got $1 million together on 24 hours notice?
Yeah, but to liquidate my bitcoins.
Oh, really? Would have thought you'd be flush with cash from the Skyfire TV series. Oh wait, that's right, the CW pass.
So yeah, I don't like Andrew Dabb, but admittedly, he's been put into a situation where I feel that he is being told to carry on. Apparently, the big reason why this show keeps going is Robert Singer. I've heard that this guy literally has kept this show going as long as he can because it's an easy job, and 2, he likes writing these really weird and very broken and non-impactful stories and keeping this show going, even though a lot of people feel that this show is dragging itself through the mud. It's so blatantly obvious how the writers are scrambling to try and keep a consistent and cohesive storyline. In season 13, the only story that was actually consistent throughout was Jack, and that actually was pretty impressive considering how many dropped storylines there were in that season. The weird tremor things that Amadeus was trying to bring back, Amadeus himself, Gabriel being terribly retconned from death and then killed again, Lucifer being the king of heaven and then not being the king of heaven again, the complete and utter randomness of Michael taking on Dean as a vessel, even though he's from a different dimension and he had no idea that Dean or Sam existed in that dimension, but somehow they're still compatible in this dimension. And then they have the fight of all fights, and the only thing that gets fucking broken is a pew table, and this was supposed to be the battle that was going to destroy the entire world, and yet all that can happen is a really bad wire work and a terrible light show. When you actually stop and take a look from my perspective and that of other people who really enjoyed this show, you start to understand why we are frustrated. Now, I know that the 300th episode is coming up in this season, and by God, I hope this is the last season. Again, going back to Sarah Z's video, she brings up Buffy. Buffy went on for 8 seasons, and while admittedly not all the storylines worked, it had a great progression throughout, and it ended on a high note as good as it could have. And funny enough, Supernatural is making the same mistakes that Buffy did over and over again, and yet no one seems to mind. The last season, being season 12 before season 13, had a rating viewership of almost the exact same as season 5. And I honestly cannot tell you why. Season 12 was one of the worst seasons this show has had. The British Men of Letters was an incredibly incompetent, terribly written, and absolutely non-threatening as fuck at all villain storyline. So why was this so watched? I have a feeling it's because the viewer base knows what they're watching, and they know they won't get upset by it. They know that the outcomes are as plain as day obvious, but they know that in the end, the conclusion will be something in their favor. Some people don't like watching shows that have negative outcomes. Look at Game of Thrones. I'd be very interested if a lot of the Supernatural fans that are nowadays could stand watching Supernatural if it was filmed like Game of Thrones. Would you be able to handle all those characters actually staying dead like they should? Take a step back and look at it from a perspective of not wanting your show to turn into a giant pile of garbage. There's no way that this show is going to have a conclusion that's going to satisfy us all. We should know that by now. Unless they made a 3-parter that was a conclusion that somehow gave the stakes the similar as 11 or 5, we're never going to get a conclusion that we're going to be appreciative of. We're never going to get a conclusion that we're going to accept. And there's some of you who will even say, oh, I want the show to go on forever. I'm sorry to be brutally honest, but what fucking universe do you think we live in? Why do you think that a show like this could go on forever? Are you still like living in make-believe land? I know that a lot of you are very big fans of the show, but when I see this comment come up again and again, you already have an impossible feat in front of you. And the fact that some of you are joking about it going on to season 20, I'm very interested to see what kind of drugs or hallucinogens you are on, because there's no fucking way. The brothers will be almost 50. Like I said, see, I got upset again because of just how ridiculous the situation is. So in conclusion, really the people that are harming this show is us. Us continuing to watch it and continuing to let it keep going and just putting itself in mud. So really, even though I know that I'm probably going to watch at least a little bit of 14 to see that 300th episode, we are ourselves damaging it and letting it just degrade and destroy itself. That's just my message to you guys. I know I've talked about this, and I think this will be the last video I ever talk about with it. But if you want to watch a much clearer, much calmer, much more respectful video about the situation of Supernatural, watch Sarah Z's video. It's very good. Anyways, guys, that's all from me. If you liked this video and you weren't terribly pissed off about me, maybe give it a like, and if you're interested, maybe subscribe. Anyways, that's all from me, guys. I'll see you next time.